It is 12:20. It's looking to continue to monitor Idalia as now a Category 1 hurricane in South Georgia. Rob, we were just talking about during the break how this is pretty much clicking along with our forecast impacts. We knew this would be kind of coming in two different pieces. The first would be the rain this morning, followed by a flurry of severe weather threats, we think, late morning into mid-afternoon. Then the center of the storm, which brings in the gusty winds and the potential for storm surge flooding later on.
And that's still yet to come. So the tornado watch goes until 10 o'clock tonight. So we've got that on the table right now. What isn't happening yet is the tide that's coming in addition to once the center of the storm gets a little bit closer to us. Now we're talking about even stronger, gustier winds. But you can see the rainfall totals 2 to 4 inches. I think I looked at our rain gauge here at Channel 2. We've already had close to an inch of rain here just so far this morning. So that's going to fall in line, I think, with what we're looking at overall. Back inland, because the track shifted just a little bit yesterday, they kind of hedged that more rain band, if you will, the heavier rain bands a little farther west too.
Yeah, and there's something that I wanted to point out on that too. That's almost because you got to think about these tropical systems as they make their way toward us and they're being picked up by the jet stream. There's almost a frontal boundary that comes out of the center, and what it looks like is happening right along I-95 in the guidance, or just west of I-95, you're seeing almost a boundary where the air is piling up, and that's why we've got that concentration of the heaviest rain totals back in that area.
Yeah, if you look at Vipercast, we talked about this last night, there was a ribbon of just tremendous amounts of rainfall, and it was really cutting our state in half just to the west of the immediate Charleston area of the coast. But again, so rain's an issue, winds will be an issue, more of an issue as we get into the afternoon and especially into the evening.
Yeah, we've got the wind product there for you based off of what we saw this morning with our guidance and the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. Looking at the one that just came down at 11 a.m., there's really no reason to change this. We're looking at 35 to 55 mile per hour gusts inland, 55 perhaps as high as 75 along the coastline.
It's not out of the question, not out of the question, because our big question mark going into yesterday and today was when Idalia made landfall, what would it look like? How big would it be? How strong would it be? Then once it moved onshore, if it got stronger, it's going to take a little longer to wind down and then hold maybe hurricane status all the way, looks like, into Georgia and maybe into lower South Carolina. That's why we got hurricane watches up too and hurricane warnings down to the south.
And then the next phase of this, as we're getting those strong onshore gusty winds, the tide is going to be rolling in late this afternoon and into this evening. It's centered on mid-evening in Charleston Harbor, but about 2 hours either side of that tide, which is at around 9 o'clock, 2 hours either side of that, we've got the window for some pretty significant coastal flooding.
And here's a good barometer. We've had two pretty high tides this summer, one in June and one earlier this month. This one could potentially be higher than both of those. So if you had issues on those two high tides, especially the one in June and then the one, again, I think was August 2nd, you're going to have issues tonight because in addition to that, we've got the onshore winds, we've got rain on top of the water coming in with the tide. So this could really be a really dicey situation later on.
One of the points that Grace and I made this morning on News 2 Today is that if you take on water on what we call a sunny flooding day,
right,
which is where you have salt water coming in due to tides, you're likely going to take on water tonight. And it could be quite significant based off of what we
all know those areas that flood. Hey, last night the tide ended up being 7.7 feet, Josh, and there were many roads closed last night. Tonight we're looking at potentially 8.5.
And depending on the angle of the passage of the storm and how long those southeast winds come into the coast, that might even be a little higher in some spots.
It has been. The forecast has gone higher a little bit, and I think it has the potential of going even higher just because we got to watch the track of the storm and just see what's happening at that time.
And we'll leave with some good news, and that's that we think most of this is going to be wrapping up around midnight or shortly thereafter. And then we have that to look forward to, which is a gorgeous weekend.
I'm glad you put that up.
And highs in the low to mid 80s because it is going to be really nice at the end of the week into the weekend.
All right.
We'll be right back. Coming right up with more News 2 at noon. It's 12:24.